Hello everybody, welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and am I looking forward to this? We need to talk about Garnacho and you are going to get in the comments. Forget the pylon. I want to know, what do you want? What do you want with a level head here? Because we see the pylon, we see the agenda, we see it with other players, but what do you want? This is a lad with immense talent in my belief. I'm going to compare him this season to the likes of Saka, Gordon, Rashford, Ahmad. And I tell you what, if you're an Ahmad fan, get excited because his stats compared to everybody else are incredible. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But we're here to talk about Garnacho because where we are at the moment is a remarkable position where we have this 20-year-old, and he's only just 20, July, so he's 20 and a half, with talent, with potential, who's scored goals like Everton, and has shown moments and has shown bad moments, but is 20 with a new manager who I think actually likes him, and that might be the decider for everybody because it certainly is for me. And yet we have this enormous noise around him. There are those that like him and there are those that despise him. I've never known this with a 20-year-old at Manchester United. Is this the new world? Is that something to comment on? We're here to talk about Garnacho, and I'm very excited to be looking at the comments after this video goes out because I want to know what you think and what you want. And you have to remove the noise because if you are somebody that wants him, think he's rubbish and everything like that, so what do you want? Do you want to just shout at how bad and how rubbish he is and get nothing for him? Do you want him to hit a certain level and then we cash in? Or do you want to back him and get him to as good as he can be? Because some are saying, is he the, and this is a question to you, is he the next Ronaldo or is he the next Rashford? Or is he the next Lingard? Because I'd actually say that that's part of the problem. Because I'd be quite happy with the next Nani. You don't have to be Ronaldo and you don't have to flop like Lingard. You could be Nani, who on their day is really good, but obviously is a little bit inconsistent, but still works hard, still works for the team and just has a certain level. We live in that TikTok society I've mentioned so many times, don't we now, where it's either great or shite. And actually, maybe it might be something in between. Have we set the standards too high? Will he not achieve? Will he be another Yanasai? There's loads to discuss and we are going to do it. But I think the big question I want to ask is, what do you want? What do you want and what do you think? Because there is no point in screaming and shouting and saying a player is shit if you haven't got an idea of what you want. Like, if you say it about a manager, you probably want them to be sacked. If you say it about a player, there has to be a pathway. And screaming and shouting about it isn't helpful to you, the player, or the exit. It's the same with Rashford. If you want Rashford out and you think he's done, then there has to be a pathway out, whether it's PSG, whether it's Bayern Munich, whatever, and you've got to work for that pathway in a grown-up and mature way. And if you want Garnacho to move on, where is he going? How does that happen? Because we do not and will not live in a world at Man United where we can just scream and shout and abuse a player and it's going to resolve itself. You're actually just tipping petrol onto the fire and it will keep burning. There has to be solutions. Now, for me, I'm very resolute on this. I believe that there is a player here with a higher ceiling than anybody. Maybe there's one or two players I might change my mind about that. But, I did say that 18 months ago, and I've said it for the last 18 months. I believe that Garnacho has the highest ceiling in this squad. The whole point in football is that opinions change and belief isn't fact. And maybe over the last 18 months, I might have seen a couple of players come along that I think maybe they might surpass him. But I still believe in their talent. It's not that I don't think he's talented. It's not that I don't think he's got potential. I just think a couple of other players might be coming through that will challenge him and maybe surpass him. And that's probably because he is going through a bit of a strange patch at the moment. But I believe in the talent. And I go back to the FA Cup final that we lost against Man City. I think Sancho started, he was dreadful, and Garnacho came on with 20 minutes to go and had Man City's defence on roller skates. They were all over the place. I look at the Everton goal, which was just pure technique. And I think the thing I've always liked about Garnacho is he makes things happen. And people don't really understand what I mean by that, is that he might go past the player and overrun it for a corner, for a goal kick. He might go past the player and cross it and we score. He might put it in the top corner. He might put it in the Stretford end. But he makes things happen. There are other players that don't go past the player and it goes for a goal kick and don't put it in the Stretford end. They just don't do anything. And I think Garnacho is that type of player. And my belief is that when you've got somebody who's 20, they are not the finished article. Very, very far from it. I mean, it's incredible to think that last season he was 19. Because he's born in July, every season for Garnacho he's that year. So he doesn't become 21 this season, he becomes 21 in July. So last season was 19. This season's is 20. Next year it'll be his 21. This is incredibly young. Incredibly young. I think Ahmad's 22 and we're still developing him. So look, people develop at different ages, but I think there's a wrath. There's a dislike towards a player that is not there. And if I could do it in an analogy, it's very much like building something that's not complete and you don't even know what it's going to look like. Like, people are predicting the outcome without actually letting us build it. And the big thing for me is that if Amorim decides Garnacho's not part of the project and wants to move him on, he must be moved on. But if Amorim decides this is a player that he believes in, and I actually think he does, then we should be getting behind that, because I look at, if Amorim basically keeps picking Garnacho and is like very pro Garnacho, which is what I would do, by the way, then that suggests that Amorim believes what I believe, and some of you believe, is that this is not the finished article. It's rough around the edges, but if you can smooth that, you can create a really interesting player here. And we're already seeing that with Ahmad. So I think what Amorim decides is ultimately what's important. What has to be mentioned is, and we need to talk about this, is why there is this, I hate the word toxicity, but why there is this uncertainty around Garnacho from some. Obviously, we've got people in our fan base who just want to see the world burn. You know, I mean, we've seen all sorts around Garnacho, haven't we? And we know these people exist. They champion other players even if they play crap, and they dislike other players even if they play well. It's weird. For me, it's Manchester United. If players are playing well, welcome. If they're not playing well, you deserve the criticism. And maybe Garnacho does deserve some criticism, but I still see the talent. I still see the potential, and I don't understand why people are so negative towards Garnacho. Look, Ronaldo is his idol. He's done the celebrations. You know, there is that edge to him. But he's 20. He's a young lad. He's grown up with social media. You know, Rasmus is the same. Mainu will be the same. They're a different generation to many of us. You can't argue with that. The whole social media stuff about leaks and stuff that's been going on this week, I'm not even going to talk about. I mean, the way that I got mentioned in relation to that just shows me that the people who are putting these rumours out are bullshitters. So I'm not even going to spend seconds on it, because as soon as that we got pulled into it, and I know us, and I know we, and I know my role is zilch, then I'm like, well, if you're saying that about me and you're saying it about that, there's nothing in it. And actually, the whole leak thing, realistically, the club know, Amorim knows, and how they deal with it, again, is up to them. It's not for us to judge. The manager's job's at stake if people are leaking stuff. If he's not bothered, then you know what? He's still picking the players that are apparently doing it. So what does it even matter? There's something bigger here. It's Player FC. It's Bruno against Pogba. It's Rashford against Garnacho. Let's call it what it is. It is Player FC. We have these sections in our fan base that, you know, are knocking one out to each poster, and they're going to war with each other, and that's all it is. And I would love Rashford to start scoring goals and playing well. And I do rate Garnacho, and I don't really care who does it, as long as Man United win. And that's where I think a lot of people are. So I'm not really interested in the toxicity on social media, because it happens to other players. It's a nonsense. What do you want? What do you want? And the comments are going to be brilliant, because if you don't like Garnacho, what do you want and why do you want it? And if you do like Garnacho, what's the pathway to where the limit is? Because the pathway to me for Garnacho is Real Madrid. That seems to be where this ends if it goes the way it should go. Real Madrid come in, maybe he wants to go there. And that's the dream, because the money would be massive. And the form over the next 2 or 3 years for us would be immense. So that's the pathway. Do I think that's going to happen? It's probably wrong to talk about it, because young players, maybe even Garnacho, can start to believe it. I saw Cristiano Ronaldo follow this pathway, and he did it and still does it to this day, with immense work rate, dedication, you know, to the finest detail, diet, time to turn up, time to stay in late, absolute dedication. And I saw this player come in from Sporting and turn himself into this player that Real Madrid just had to take. Garnacho may never achieve that, but he has got potential. He's not got Ronaldo potential. I don't know why that ever happens, but he has got potential to be something really special. But he's going to have to work really hard. And I think he's got the right manager. And I actually think when it comes to Garnacho, it's not my business, it's not your business, it's Amorim's business. And he will either sink or swim with Garnacho and Amorim. That relationship will either sink or swim. And if he sinks, it's because he's not right. And if he swims, it's because he has got the talent and Amorim has brought it out of him. I think we've got the best person possible for Garnacho, and that's what I truly believe. But if you don't believe that, then what do you want? He has a long contract. He will play minutes. Like, it's the same with Rashford. Until Rashford gets sold, and he may never get sold, he will keep putting a Man United shirt on and screaming and shouting and abusing and everything like that. Will not help this football club. And it's the same with Garnacho. We have to be more mature about this. And really, it's a prediction game, isn't it? Where do you think this is going to be? I think he'll be here in 2 years' time, a big part of Amorim's rebuild. If he's not going to be here in 2 years' time, then he'll be part of the rebuild and we need to cash in for maybe £30 million to somebody like Monaco. And that's the pathway. But the pathway is not abuse and scream and shout and hate and call him this, that and the other and, God forbid, boo or anything like that. That's just incredible. And I don't think it would ever happen at Old Trafford because I think our match-going fans just wouldn't do it. And that is to their credit. But there has to be a question to all of you, what do you want? I said this when people were wanting Ten Hag to be sacked. What do you want afterwards? If you're going to scream and shout, have a hypothetical pathway. And that is what I think people get very angry about in modern society is they want to scream and shout, but they don't actually ever think through what it is they want from it. Do you want to sell Garnacho for 30 million to Monaco in the next year? At least that's a pathway. We get a bit of money. It's pure profit. Do you want, or do you just want to scream and shout and listen to others who, let's just abuse him. Let's just abuse him. Let's just scream and shout and abuse him, which damages the team and everybody else. I don't really care about an outcome. I mean, how incredibly infantile is that? So you have to ask yourself what you want and what's achievable. I'll throw it back to me. What I want is this player to become a massive part of our team, playing in behind the striker, rotating with the likes of Mount and Bruno and Ahmad in that situation behind a striker. That's where I want him to develop. That's where I want him to play. I don't think he will start every game. He may not even be in the best team, but I think he's a player that makes things happen and needs to grow. Maybe he's had too much too soon. I think last season he became a starter in a system for Ten Hag. Maybe that was too much too soon. Maybe he still needs out in 30 minutes start, out the team. Maybe he still needs a little bit of that. But he doesn't need to be thrown on the scrap heap. And I still think that there's loads and loads of development there. And that's the interesting point, because when you look at this season, and I've used Garnacho, Rashford, Ahmad, Saka, and Anthony Gordon. Goals per 90, 0.44 for Garnacho, 0.39 for Rashford, 0.19 for Ahmad, 0.37 for Saka, and 0.21 for Gordon. Now, people will be saying, well, Saka scored more goals than Garnacho, but I think Saka's played slightly more games. So his goals to game ratio stands up with the likes of Saka and, other players in the Premier League, despite him having a horrible season, because he hasn't had a horrible season. When it comes to assists per 90, it ain't great. 0.1 assists per 90, which equates to 1 assist per 10 games. Same for Rashford. Ahmad is 0.3, so it's a lot better. Saka's 0.4, so he's nearly getting an assist every 2 games. And Anthony Gordon's is 0.05, so he's worse than Garnacho and Rashford. But 1 assist per 10 games is not good enough. That's not good enough. When Saka's getting an assist every other game, we can't be in a situation, Garnacho, where you're only getting 1 assist every 10 games. That has to improve. And as we know with Ahmad, he is 0.3. So Ahmad is getting 3 assists every 10 games. Garnacho is getting 1 assist every 10 games. But then you've got Saka who's getting 4 assists every 10 games. That's got to go up. It has to go up. And that's where it's encouraging with someone like Ahmad. Shots per 90, 3.5 shots per 90 for Garnacho, 2 for Rashford, 2.5 for Ahmad, 2.5 for Saka, and 2 for Gordon. So he's having more shots than everybody else as well. So again, more assists, less shots. Balance it out. And that, I acknowledge that is an area he needs to improve on. obviously. Passes per 90, 30 passes per 90 he averages. Rashford averages 29. Ahmad's 38. Saka's 32. Anthony Gordon's 30. More importantly, how accurate is he with that? Because he's below Ahmad and he's below Saka. 82% pass accuracy. Rashford's 76%. Ahmad is up at 86%. And Saka is 83% and Anthony Gordon is 80%. So he's not bad, way better than Rashford, better than Anthony Gordon, but not as good as Ahmad and Saka in relation to pass completion. But he's not far off. So there's an area to improve there. It comes back to assists, I think. And then this was really interesting. Successful defensive actions per 90, because as we know now, obviously Garnacho can improve comparable to Ahmad in relation to assists and passing. And he's not far off and he can improve on that. Goals, he's better. But defensive work is so important. So important. Successful defensive actions per 90. 4.7 Garnacho. 3.6 Rashford. 5.2 Ahmad, which is immense. 4.4 Saka. 4.5 Anthony Gordon. So out of all those 5 players, Ahmad is head and shoulders above. Now, people might say, well, he's playing as a wing back now. Well, I still think he puts a lot of work in. This is for the season. It's, he's only done that for the last 3 weeks. Ahmad's defensive work is immense. And we need to talk about Garnacho, but we've ended up talking about Ahmad a little bit, and there's a relevancy to that. But Garnacho is second out of Ahmad, Garnacho, Rashford, Saka, and Gordon. I mean, Rashford's way down, unfortunately, but some would say that's not surprising when it comes to defensive work. But Garnacho's defensive work is actually better than Saka and Anthony Gordon. So there is a hidden story here that sometimes the noise swallows up the truth. Garnacho does need to improve on his assists. He does need to shoot less. But his defensive work's pretty good. And it's better than Saka and it's better than Gordon. And it's certainly better than Rashford. He's actually got a better goal conversion rate than Saka this season. And he's number 1 out of those 5 players, albeit because he's played less games. His assists need to work better. Definitely 1 assist out of 10 isn't good enough. And his passing could improve slightly. But this is what I mean. 20. He's the youngest one there. He's the youngest one there by a long way. Why are we judging him against 27-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 23-year-olds? He's 20. And he's got the best goal conversion rate. His defensive work rate is second. And obviously he needs to improve on shooting and assists. Well, at 20, I'll live with that. And that's my end point, really, is that the criticism is valid, but it's also tapered by the fact that he's 20. There's development there. There is a CV there. Everton. Some of the games he's played fantastic. Obviously, he's had bad games as well. Maybe it's just being a Man United fan for so long and seeing the development of Beckham in 4K. Paul Scholes, Nicky Butt, Gary Neville. And seeing all of those. I mean, I remember Scholes, and I remember Scholes in his first sort of year, and he was basically playing as a striker, and I was like, he's going to end up in the Championship playing for Oldham. He's not going to be a Man United player. I distinctly remember that. And then he developed into one of the best midfielders of a generation. So, and he would have been around that age, 20. So it's amazing how, look, we live in a very impatient society. I know that. But it's amazing that they're actually, when you look under the bonnet of the car that is Garnacho, there is an engine there that doesn't actually need a refit. It just needs a bit of a tune. And I think Amorim is the mechanic to do it. So we need to talk about Garnacho, and it's over to you to talk about Garnacho. But the things I would say is, I just think this story's not told yet. I think we're on a journey, and I just think we need to be patient with it. And I think we've got the right fundamentals and the right ingredients to really be in a year's time with a better player. One thing I haven't mentioned, though, is we could sink this player. You could sink this player. The noise, the pile-on is big. It's strange, but it is. And we could sink this player. We could underappreciate this player. We could be the judge on this player before he's even developed and grown. I would implore you not to be that, because even if you don't like the player, I'll go back to what I said. what do you want? If you don't believe in him and you don't think he's good enough, you'd still need to be selling him to Monaco for 30 million in the summer, in which case he still needs to be given opportunities and to develop. Why completely destroy it? I don't get that. Why completely scream and shout about it? Because all that happens then is he just stays at the club on a contract earning money for the next 4 years. If you don't want him in the club, then you've got to, in a way, support him to move out of the club, be given the opportunities and show that he's not good enough. But I think he is. I'm not going to change. Do I think he's the player with the highest ceiling in the squad, finally? I'm looking at Ahmad this season, and in looking at Garnacho on this, and in looking at the defensive work rate of Ahmad and the assists of Ahmad, and looking, I mean, he's not Saka, but he's on that path. Like, he works harder defensively than Saka, who is a brilliant defensive winger, and his assists are getting close to Saka. If he could add goals, that's the thing that Saka's got, is the goals. But I'm not comparing Ahmad to Saka. You can't compare Man United to Arsenal. They're worlds apart. But in Ahmad, we've got a player here that is just really interesting. And for Garnacho, that's the player we should be looking at. Because Ahmad's older, and he's developing in the way that Amrim wants his wide players to develop. Get your comments in below. If you enjoyed it, smash a like on the video as well. Speak to you on the next one. Can't wait to read the comments. They're going to be fire. Speak to you in a bit.